When I first began to follow Jesus, there were things that I began to understand well, things I got really interested in, God's grace, how big God was. I was reading books that showed me how big he was. I was real interested in God's attributes. One of the things that took me a long time to fully understand was how central the church was to what God was doing. And so I talk to guys all the time who really say, hey, I really love Jesus. And I'll attend church because I like to hear good sermons, but their commitment to the local church isn't that much. And you see that a lot, even with college students. College is kind of that age where you just kind of float around in nothingness, almost like you're not a real person yet. You're trying to figure out what being a real person is. And you're going to train for almost like, hey, I'm not a doctor yet. I'm in medical school. Almost like, hey, this is kind of my training stage. And I'll really get into it once I kind of move on to the next adult stage. And I want to say there is no good, healthy, regular pattern of the Christian life if you are not joined with a local church, if you're not in covenant with other Christians. Not just I have some Christian friends who we talk to sometimes. I'm talking about the way that God set it out, that there are leaders that you submit to. There are other Christians you covenant to pray for and care for. There's actually something that other Christians can do to help you if you fall into unrepentant sin. All the beautiful mercies God has given us to gather together, to sing together, to sit under preaching together. That is huge in the life of a Christian. And so we can't say, I've been adopted by God. He's my father. I'm glad he is. But I'm just going to ignore his people altogether. That doesn't make any sense, because if you're adopted in his family, you now have brothers and sisters. So that when we become new Christians, our identity changes as individuals, but also in another way, kind of corporately. So it's like when I got married, I remember sitting on the couch. I was like, man, life as I knew it is so different. I don't think of anything the same way. It's a very similar thing when we get saved, is that we can't just think of things individually anymore. Because just like when I get married, now I'm one with another sinner. We have to wrestle with things together. When we trust Jesus, not only do we become one with Jesus, but we become one with his people. There's a unity that Jesus has already won for us that we're now beginning to fight for. And so just like I can't just get married and then decide to just ignore my wife. It's like, what are you doing? In the same way, you can't just be adopted into a new family and just decide you're just going to ignore your brothers and sisters. It makes no sense. It's illogical. So not only are you robbing them of the ways that you can edify them, you're robbing yourself of the ways that can edify you. It is core to what it means to follow Jesus. And so I encourage that young man strongly. Do whatever you can to find a church that preaches God's word, that's centered around the gospel, and where people want to fight to love him more.